Hey guys, I just realized that every time I film a video lately, I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'm a hot mess, blah, 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 blah. Let's just face it, I'm just a fucking hot mess. Like, the sooner we all accept this and move on, the sooner we can just enjoy our lives, right? So I'm like hot and gross and just got home from the store and it's like really humid out, so this is just me right now, okay? I'm also, excuse me if you hate eating, but I'm eating some chocolate Pop-Tarts right now and a glass of milk. So I might be snacking while I'm talking in this video, but I'll try not to talk with my mouth open or anything. I was gonna talk about my first job, which was Chuck E. Cheese, and sort of tell y'all my experience with that because it was pretty funny. I wasn't there very long. I think I was there like a month or two. I was 15 when I started, I believe. I was about to turn 16. But I did that in high school because a bunch of my friends worked there, and actually when I started, a lot of them had left, and one still worked there, my friend Chanel, and we cheered together and danced together and stuff, but she trained me, and I have some funny stories. I have a funny story about her too, so I hope you watching Chanel because I'm about to call you out. Anywho, it was actually not a bad job. I actually enjoyed it a lot, and I'll get into why I left so soon towards the end of the video, because there is good reason in my mind why I left. But the funniest part about getting the job was what happened right before I got the job and the fact that I was aware of it. So apparently, I don't know if this is just in my city, because I live sort of like in a rough city outside of Nashville. And I don't know if this is something that happens at Chuck E. Cheese normally around the country, but at our Chuck E. Cheese, we got robbed at gunpoint all the damn time. Like, all the time. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just people figured parents had a lot of cash, because back then you had to, like, you couldn't, like, do cards like you can now. You had to put in cash for tokens and stuff. So maybe that's why. I don't know. There was a girl I knew through, like, I didn't know her, but it was like a family friend or something. She was one of the managers. It was like a family friend's niece or something like that. And so she put in a good word for me, and I went and interviewed and got it. And I had a couple friends who still worked there right when I started working. And one of them, her and that manager that I knew, both got held at gunshot, like, right before I started the job. And they told me about it and told me, like, you know, how scary it was, and that they just walked in right in front of all these kids and families on a busy day and freaking held them up. And they just gave them the money. We were like trained about it, like, don't be a hero, just give them the money and let them go and then call the police or whatever. So I was like, all right, cool, I'm down. Again, this is the neighborhood I grew up in, so I was kind of like used to that. But I got the job, and training was really fun, especially since, like I said, one of my friends mostly trained me. And I remember when our manager, this guy who was like the big manager at the store, he showed us around the whole place. And I remember him taking us to the freezer. They had like a big walk-in freezer for, you know, food and stuff like that. And it was in the center of the building, basically. So the outside, where everyone's walking in and playing and stuff, and then you got the kitchen and stuff back here, and then, like, on both sides of that there's an entryway, so it's literally in the middle of the freaking store. And when we went to the freezer, he told us, like, we thought he was kidding too. He said, if you ever need to, like, just come in here and shut the door and scream, this is where we do it. And I was like, okay. And then later I did it a couple times. I would see people do it, and I was like, oh my God. Because it was a lot, like, dealing with kids and parents who were doing birthday parties, and parents who come for birthday parties usually are really, like, anal about stuff and very critical. And I dealt with a lot of nice families with my birthday parties, but there was always, you know, just like one person who could be kind of difficult. So it was very frustrating with all the noise and all the screaming constantly. You just kind of needed to, like, scream yourself. So a lot of people went in the freezer and screamed, and it was pretty funny. So what I did there was birthday parties. They usually typically the girls would be either working the birthday parties or the front counter doing cashiering, and the guys would normally be doing repairing all the machines and stuff. So when like the token machine was out or one of the games was messed up, the guys would usually do that. But I actually got trained with 2 other guys. I'm pretty sure they were getting trained to do birthday parties too. I don't know if they were like short staffed, but usually guys didn't do birthday parties at this location. I don't know why, but it was just usually the girls who did it. So my friend Chanel was training the 3 of us, and we had to learn the schedule. So when you do a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, it's a very rigid schedule that you have to stick to. I think the parties are like an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half. It's been like 15 years since I worked there. But I remember it was like, you get them to their table within 15 minutes. You need to have their pizza order in, their first pizza order in, which was usually really easy. You'd be like, do you want me to just get a bunch of cheese pizzas out here for the kids? You know, get their drinks, get all that. And then it'd be like Chucky time to come out and dance and sing happy birthday. You bring out the cake. So you'd ask them if they had a cake that they brought, or we had these like frozen cakes we could bring out that were actually pretty decent. They were like a whipped cream icing, so it wasn't anything that like hardened really. So we would offer to bring out a cake, or we would use their cake and we'd like cut it for them and try and serve them and like do everything for the parents that we could. Help them with the presents, like shifting everything around. We tried to be really helpful and make it as streamlined as possible. Get Chucky out to distract the kids and stuff. And then when their party was over, we would have to tell them, we need this space now, but if you want, we'll help you move to like a booth somewhere else. Like there's usually booths surrounding the main stage area where all the birthday parties are. So it wasn't really difficult. It was a lot of fun. And most of the people that you worked with were really nice and were really understanding, and they'd be like, you know, sweetheart, would you mind getting me this? I hate to bother you. And I'd be like, yeah, definitely. Like, that's why I'm here. So it was actually really fun. A lot of them would tip you after the parties, which was really nice. It was so funny because they would tip like $3 or something, but it was like the thought that counted, because you didn't work there for tips. You worked there at like minimum wage or something. But it was just a nice addition on. And a lot of the parents would go up to like your manager afterwards and compliment you if you were really good. So it was fun. I liked the experience. So we had to train in the Chucky costume. And yes, I was in the Chucky costume a few times. And that sucker is hot as hell. You are only supposed to be in it for like 15-minute increments max, because it gets so hot in there, like 10-15-minute increments, I believe. It's so sweaty and gross. And it's just, ugh, it's nasty. So what we would do is, usually I think we would like announce it over the mic or something that Chucky was coming in like 5 minutes or something. But basically wherever Chucky was, the Chucky room was, we would treat it like his bedroom. So when it was time for Chucky to go home, we'd be like, it's time for Chucky to go to bed. Go home, Chucky. Like that was his room that he'd go in. It was just where the costume was hanging and stuff. And when I worked there, it was when it was like superhero Chucky. So I had a cape and everything like that. It was pretty funny. Well, being a girl doing the Chucky costume was pretty easy. Apparently being a guy was not that easy, because you had to wear an athletic cup, and a lot of the guys forgot their athletic cup. And there's toddlers and little kids the size of the height of your waist, basically, coming up and being like, Chucky, 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 and they hit you out of excitement. And as a girl, it's just like, oh, okay, you know, like, and you're like waving at them and doing all these animated things. But you would see the guys like suddenly like crouch over like in pain. And we'd be like, okay, Chucky has to go home now. Like we'd have to like divert him away for a minute, or be like, Chucky, go back home and get this, like to give the guys a break, because they would be like dying. It was pretty funny. And then you would do like a little dance, and if you were working the birthday party and you weren't Chucky, you did this dance like they would play like a birthday song in the background, or like a pizza song or something like that. And so we had like a little choreographed dance we would do for the kids and stuff, and it was fun. Well, this is where I'm gonna call out Chanel, because this was funny as shit, and I still remember this story. So like I said, I was training with 2 other guys, and it was one of the guys' turn to be Chucky that day, because you did it multiple times a day, like every hour someone had to be Chucky. So this guy was training, and he gets on the Chucky costume, and he comes out, and me and Chanel and the other guy do the little dance with Chucky. And what you usually do is you're like, when it's been about 10 minutes or so, you're like, okay, Chucky, are you ready to go home? And Chucky will be like, no. And you're like, come on, Chucky, it's time to go home. We'll see you later, you know, and then Chucky will be all sad and like wave to the kids and leave. Like he doesn't want to leave the kids. Well, I don't know why, but we were so swamped one day. You get really brain dead doing this job, so I don't blame Chanel at all for this, but it was so funny. She was training this guy. He comes out and does the dance and plays with the kids and stuff. And then Chanel says, Chucky, are you ready to go home? And he goes, no. And she goes, okay. And like took me to go do something else. And I was like, why are you leaving him out there? Okay, maybe it's like in my head, I'm like, okay, maybe he's only been out for 5 minutes. And she asked him on accident. So she's going to leave him for a minute and come back. We both left the birthday party area to go do something else. Like we had to go pick up pizza orders or something like that and deliver them to the table. Something else was going on. About another 15 minutes passed. So this kid has been in this costume for probably 30 minutes at this point. And I walked past the stage area and from afar, I see him there like still playing with the kids and stuff. And I remember yelling, Chanel, Chucky's still out there. And Chanel dropped what was in her hands, busted ass across the Chuck E. Cheese. And Chanel is very tiny. She's like 4'11". This little girl went running across the damn store going, Chucky, go home, Chucky, go home, Chucky, go home. And I've never seen a Chucky costume jump over a child and then jump over a chair to get back to her room so fast. Like he was dying in that suit, but he couldn't just up and leave the kids because he can't talk. He can't just be like, bye kids. And then like, they like to have someone else to blame basically, to be like, Chucky has to go. So he went booking it back to the room and Chanel was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I left him out there that long. And the dude comes out after like 5 minutes, dripping in sweat. And he just walked out and looked at Chanel like pissed. And she's like, sorry, you did a good job. Like, way to go. And she left him out there and he was training. So he like didn't know what to do but stay out there. So thank God like we caught it, but it was so funny. It wasn't funny to him. It might be funny now looking back, but it was hilarious that kid had like stuck out there because we got busy and distracted and forgot that Chucky was out there entertaining the kids. So that's like the funny story. A lot of like crazy stuff happened with the kids. Like I don't think when I worked there I ever really had like, I think we did. I think we had 1 or 2 incidents where like a kid got sick or wet their pants or something like in the play tube. So like one of the guys had to go up in there and like clean it, which was gross. And thankfully I never had to do that part. But the funniest thing that I came across was one day when I was going back into the kitchen to get something. And there was this little boy there who was like 2 years old, this tiny little boy. He was so cute, but he's got his little shorts down around his ankles and there's a drain in the floor for when you're mopping the kitchen floor for all the water to drain down into. And there's a drain in the floor and he's standing there peeing all over the kitchen floor, like just going at it. Couldn't find the bathroom, didn't know where his parents were, I guess, and thought, I gotta go now. So he just walked it back into the kitchen, pushed the door open and pulled his pants down and went pee. And I walked in and I went, what are you doing? Like it was just like a reflex. He looked at me, he finished peeing, and he pulled his pants up and he walked right back out. He didn't say it. He was like not even fazed by me being freaked out at him. Like I wasn't yelling at him, but I was like, what are you doing? Like you can't pee here or whatever. And he could not care less. Finished his job, pulled his pants up and went back out to play again. It was really weird, but really funny in hindsight. And then I like went over to this guy who had been there for a while and I was like, I don't know what to do. This kid just peed in the kitchen. He was like, I'll take care of it. And then 2 minutes later I saw him like mopping the whole kitchen in the middle of a shift. But it was really funny. One other funny thing about working at Chuck E. Cheese was having to answer the phones. God, that was so difficult because, like I said, keep in mind, you're working in a very busy environment. There are like machines really loud, games, colors, lights going on constantly, and children screaming at the top of their lungs all day, and you're running around on your feet all day. And I remember the carpet being like black with all these designs in it, these brightly colored designs, so it was just like sensory overload. I remember dreaming about that carpet. I remember dreaming about looking down at my feet as I was like running through the Chuck E. Cheese. But so it was crazy, and you'd be pretty brain dead by the end of the day. Well, when you had to answer the phone, and I only answered the phone a few times because I'd never worked at the cash register, and that's where it typically was around there. And at the time that I worked there, was when Chuck E. Cheese first started taking just one token for all their games and stuff. So none of like the big games weren't like 4 tokens anymore, and then the little ones were 1. Everything was 1 token. So we had to answer the phone saying, in the middle of all the chaos that we've been through, and obviously you're not sitting there waiting for the phone to ring, you're doing something else, and the phone rings and you have to pick it up, and you say, "We're making magic at Chuck E. Cheese where all games and rides are now 1 token. This is Haley. How can I help you?" And so you'd have to like blurt that out really fast and be like, "We're making magic at Chuck E. Cheese where all games and rides are now 1 token. This is Haley. How can I help you?" That's like not easy to say. And I remember one time the phone rang and I answered it. I was like running past the cash register and it started ringing and I was like, shit. And I picked it up and I was like, "We're making magic at Chuck E. Cheese. This is Haley." And the guy on the other end like busted out laughing, thank God. And he said, "I don't know how y'all say all that." When like I think he worked in another location, or he like had called before. He was really nice, but he was laughing about it. Thank God he wasn't mad or like a district manager or something that I would have gotten in trouble with. But it was really, really, really difficult to say. I don't know who came up with that, but oh my God, that was terrible. Now the last part I'll talk about is the reason why I actually quit. So again, I started when I was 15, I think going on 16, and I was obviously in high school, so I had a lot of school to do, and then I think at the time I was cheerleading, so I had a lot going on already, and there was a lot of issue with taking breaks and stuff at this Chuck E. Cheese at our location. Like, I liked our manager, he was cool, and we could joke around with him and stuff, but he was terrible about scheduling people and making sure people got their breaks, and he was one of those people that, "Oh no, the DM is coming today. Have you taken your break? Have you done this?" Like, it was like he wouldn't do anything he was supposed to do, and he was busy, don't get me wrong. He wasn't this like lazy guy who wasn't doing his job. He was busy. But you still need to make sure that your employees are getting their breaks. Like, he had an assistant manager. He had other people he could have delegated it out to. And usually it did get delegated out, but for one reason or another, it never got done. So you would be working, like, my shifts were sometimes after school until close, which I think they closed at like 9:30, 9 or 9:30, something like that. And then you had to like clean up and sweep under the tables and stuff. So that was fine. And then weekends. So I'd work like the whole day working birthday parties, like all Saturday and Sunday. And you would be working like an 8-hour shift, 9-hour shift, something like that. And 7 hours had passed and you had not had even a 15-minute break, like at all. Now, at the time, A, this was my first job, so I just did what I was told to do and I didn't complain about it. And B, you were kind of just so crazy that the time did fly by, but then suddenly you'd realize like, oh my God, I'm starving and I haven't had anything yet. Now, the good thing was if you ever had a meeting or something, like maybe on a weekday, sometimes the managers would like pull a couple people aside to have like a little meeting and be like, "Okay, you guys are doing great. This is where we're at. This is what we're going to do this weekend," whatever. And whenever they did that, they would order a big pizza for the table. So we'd all sit and eat pizza and have like a little meeting. So that was nice. But on these days where you're packed and stuff and nobody's getting their breaks, it was ridiculous. And there were people who would just take their breaks when they weren't supposed to, and it would screw you out of getting yours. So I remember like suddenly people would be running out of the kitchen saying, "Haley, have you taken a break yet?" And I'd be like, "No." And they'd go, "Okay, take your break in 15 minutes. And I'd be like, "Okay." And then I'd go to clock out in 15 minutes and someone else would be clocking out to take their break who wasn't supposed to. And either I would ask or someone else would notice and be like, "Why are you clocking out? Why did you just clock out? Haley needs to take a break." And that person would be like, it wasn't like, I don't remember anyone in particular, but when people would do it, they'd always be like, "I've been here for 4 hours." And I'd be like, "I've been here for 7 hours and I have not even gone to the bathroom. Like, you've got to be kidding me." And they would be like, "Well, sorry, you can go when I come back." And then by the time they came back, it was like you were about to be off or something. It was ridiculous. So you would get screwed out of taking your breaks, or they would rush and try and get everyone to do it when they knew the DM was coming in, stuff like that. So that was really irritating because it was constant. And I remember one time going into the break room and seeing, you know how all businesses have to post like a board of your rights as an employee and like work comp information and all that stuff. So on that board, I noticed that it said, if you work a 6-hour shift in the state of Tennessee, you are guaranteed a 30-minute break. And I remember at one point, after a few weeks of being there and just kind of being burnt out because I was working so much, I remember bringing it up to my manager and being like, so that board back there says that if you work 6 hours, you're supposed to get a half-hour break. And I've been here for 7 hours right now and I haven't had one. And I remember him saying, oh yeah, but that doesn't apply to you. Like, what? Yeah, it does. And I think he tried to insinuate that it didn't apply to me because I wasn't a full-time employee, because I was working like 30 hours a week and not 40. But after this job, my next job was actually Kmart, and Kmart was a stickler for breaks. Like, if you worked 6 hours, you got a 15, a 30, and another 15, and you had to go when they told you to go. Like, they were on top of it, and they really like educated us on what our rights were, what the laws were, and then what Kmart was giving us as a little extra, like extra 15s and stuff like that. So that's when I realized he was full of shit. He just didn't want me to like complain or like stop, because then he'd have to get someone else to work a birthday party because I'd be gone for half an hour. Like, that was the problem. They didn't schedule things well. They didn't schedule parties well. And if people called out, you got screwed out of your break. Like, that was just it. You had to work a couple more parties that day. So it was exhausting, but it was fun. Like, when I was working there, I was never miserable. It was just a lot. And then I remember on weeknights when we'd be closing, he would ask us, like, he would go around and ask everybody, like, who could stay late for, like, inventory or something else. And, like, first of all, our curfew was 11 p.m. Like, legally, our curfew was 11 p.m. And I was, like, driving on a permit and not a license, so I was scared to be out past 11 driving home, and I didn't have a driver's license. And he would be like, hey, call your mom really quick and ask her if you can stay till midnight tonight. And I'd be like, he wouldn't even ask, like, is that okay? He'd be like, call your mom or call your parents and ask them. And I'd call, and, like, he'd be, like, right there, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, let me call her really quick. And she'd answer, and I'd be like, say no. Hey, they're wondering if I can stay until midnight tonight. And then she'd be like, no, that's too late. You need to come home. And I'd be like, oh, crap. Okay. You know, like, I'm not staying until midnight when I have school and cheerleading practice the next day, and I'm going to be back here afterwards. Like, I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm 15. Like, I want to still have a life outside of high school. I don't want this to be, like, everything for me. So I ended up leaving just because of that, because I was just kind of tired of never getting a break, and I was really burnt out on it, and I was still young, so I wanted to be able to have more freedom and more fun. So I ended up finding another job where they gave me a lot less late hours and stuff. Like, they worked much better with your schedule, and they just had me work like one day a weekend or something, so that while I was doing all these extracurricular activities, I wasn't like dead at the end of the night. So that was really the main reason. And then I also got kind of irritated that with all of the robberies that we constantly had, and there was one day where I was working, and there was a woman outside the front of our Chuck E. Cheese, and she pulled up with a suitcase, had gloves on, and like in the middle of the summer, had black gloves on, and stood out there for half an hour calling somebody. And we were all like, oh shit. Like, I think they called the police to have the cops come out to like find out what was going on, and then she ended up walking away. But she stood there for half an hour with gloves on, a suitcase, and was talking to, like, kept calling somebody. And they had a very strict no cell phone policy. You had to leave your cell phone in your locker or you'd get fired. And I remember all of us like sneaking our cell phones into our pockets, because this person's out there and we know we get shot up all the time. So it was like, I'm keeping my phone on me from now on. Like, I'm not about to be in the back of the Chuck E. Cheese, like, when I hear a gun go off and have nothing. Like, I'm sorry, I'm keeping my phone so I can call somebody. And they got mad when they caught people with them. And that's what I said when I think they saw me one day with it. And I said, look, there is robberies here like once a week. I'm sorry. Like, I'll leave it off, but I'm keeping it on my person. Like, I'm not going to be screwed out of calling 911 or something when I'm stuck back in the bathroom and y'all are all getting like shot up. I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. So they eventually loosened up on it a little bit. But it was just irritating stuff like that where they just kind of didn't follow common sense and then didn't follow break rules and stuff. So I ended up leaving, but I don't regret it. I had a really fun time at that job. I think it was a really good learning experience, especially on like time management and stuff and getting projects done within a strict amount of time. So it was really fun. I liked it a lot. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.